All right, welcome. Good evening. Park and I are going to be covering the both the local races, state races, and national, congressional and Senate races as the results come in here live. I think the major question both here in North Carolina and nationally is the general national environment, voters' concerns about inflation, about Joe Biden's fitness to be president, about the general economic environment, do those outweigh what people are feeling about abortion? And have the Democrats been successful in making Republicans January 6th boogeymen? So I guess we're going to be finding that out. We've got early results already from early voting in North Carolina that we're going to dive into. We'll also talk about some of the congressional races nationally that are going to be good signs for what the rest of the results are going to be tonight. Um, but yeah, I'm here. Tark, you're here.
I'm here. Listen, everything just dropped. Charlie was like, let's go live. And I'm like, there's too much to see. I'm overwhelmed. We're 8 minutes into the initial drop of millions of data points. So, Charlie, I don't know what I'm seeing right now. What we got Jay Sam in the background here, Malcolm over there. We're trying to figure it out. I I don't know if I'm concerned about the early voting numbers right now that I'm seeing for the state for the national federal level Senate race. It seems like a big gap, but at the end of the day, we were looking back at what credible reference is there. There's in what 2020, which was a presidential year, not this kind of year. We're talking 2.3, 2.4 million total votes to win. But if you go all the way back to a non-presidential year cycle where Senate was on, I don't know, man, like 1.3, 1.4 million. If those end up being the total numbers, 700K by Sherry Beasley is a scary number to be at. That's half right now. I think it'll be higher than that, just by the nature of the last decade almost of growth in this area. But even so, man, so I don't. You got to do most of the talking for the next few minutes, Charlie, while I get my mind wrapped around this.
Personally, I'm not particularly worried about Ted Budd. I think he'll clear 4 or 5% win. But early voting. If you're a Republican, it's always a little bit nerve-wracking to see the early voting numbers in. I'm not sure if every county is reported yet, but let's look at the overall picture. So start with the U.S. Senate and U.S. Congress. U.S. Senate, it's 50 to 50. Um, my right now you look at basically a balance between the fact that the national environment should favor Republicans against the fact that the Republicans ran some candidates that are not particularly popular in their states, and the Democrats have a couple of incumbents that have the incumbency advantage. I personally think we'll see the Republicans pick up 3 seats, so it'll be a 53 to 47 split. You're looking at New Hampshire, Georgia, Nevada, Arizona, um, all as possible pickups for the Republicans. I think they get 3 out of 4, and they defend all of their seats. Then you look at the U.S. House. Right now, it's a six um, person advantage for the Democrats. Everybody knows that the Republicans are going to be taking over the U.S. House. The question is by how much? My personal opinion is we'll get 26 to 28 House races, but we'll be looking at some of the national bellwethers here shortly. Indiana District 1, which is kind of in the suburbs of Chicago, that is basically a district that Joe Biden won by almost 10 points. If the Republicans are looking competitive there, that's a good sign for things to come if you're a Republican. Um, and then, secondly, we're going to be looking at Virginia District 7. The incumbent there is Abigail Spanberger, who's one of the more moderate, or at least stridently kind of centrist Democrats. And that, we just saw Governor Youngkin win in Virginia. So the question will be, can Republicans maintain a lot of that same playbook that got them the win there? So those are going to be 2 races that we already are getting votes in for that we're going to be paying close attention to. And if those are proving promising, you might see that number of Republican seats gained go above 30 or even start pushing 40. We don't know anything about that yet. Looking a little bit more locally, in North Carolina, the Republicans are definitely going to maintain a majority in both the North Carolina House and the North Carolina Senate. The question is whether they're going to be able to pick up enough seats to get a supermajority and overcome Governor Cooper's veto. So the math on that is pretty simple. We need 2 Senate seats and we need 3 House seats. But the way that the maps are drawn, it's not a foregone conclusion for Republicans. So a couple of those seats that are most important to Republicans getting the supermajority actually are here in Mecklenburg County. So we're going to be looking at the House District 103, which is sort of in the Matthews and Ballantyne area. That's going to be Bill Brawley against Laura Budd. That's one of the seats Republicans need to win. We're also going to be looking at House Seat 104, which is South Park area, basically. Don Pomeroy against Brandon Lofton. And then on the Senate side, it's going to be Senate Seat 42, Cheryl Rousseau against Rachel Klein. And that Senate seat is more or less the 2 House seats that I mentioned earlier combined into one. So those are the seats that we're going to be watching here in Mecklenburg. And if the Republicans are looking good in those particular races, they're going to be looking good for the supermajority across the state. But yeah, so that's kind of what we're looking at. I know Target's still digging through the numbers as we go through the early voting results. The way it kind of works in North Carolina is that we actually, by law, have the ability to pre-count mail-in ballots as well as early voting results, which does allow they pre-count them and then hold those results until the polls close. So in all of the counties across the state where polls have already closed, those results have now been dumped. So kind of digging through the early voting results. When we look at it nationwide, go to Indiana District 1, which if you look at the map here, that's going to be this location right here, right in the Chicago area. And we've marked, by the way, on this map, all the areas here in tan are contested districts that neither the Democrats or the Republicans can be sure of winning. It might mean that either one of the parties is pretty sure that they're going to win, but all the red and blue areas I've already marked are pretty much non-contested races. But we'll be looking at Indiana District 1 here. No votes are in yet there. And then you're going to look at Virginia District 7. And that we do actually have some votes in from that so far. It's only 5% of the votes, but right now you've got the Republican challenger, Yesli Vega, with 10,000 to Spanberger 6, so it's like a 62 to 38 race right now. I don't think there's anything to draw from that yet, but once we get a bit more of the voting in from Virginia, we'll start to monitor that race a little bit more closely. So yeah, that's kind of the overview. So my personal prediction here, we haven't really seen many votes. I think we will achieve a supermajority in North Carolina. I think we will get 3 new Republican seats in the U.S. Senate and 26 in the U.S. House. But you seem to be sweating over.
All right, so let me just jump. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
still soaking everything in real time. Just the NC Senate alone, right? 3 or 4 things that jump out at me. One, Michael Lee out there in the Wilmington area. We're watching him closely. He's down 24,469 votes to Marsha Morgan's 27,902. That's a 53 to 46 spread right now. I don't love it, but we would expect him to be down, and 7%, a 7-point run up. He just needs to have a good election day, and that's achievable. I don't necessarily know how a state senate race compares to a city council race, but for my example in city council, if I'm down by 7 points at that point in early voting numbers, I'm like, I'm not feeling incredibly comfortable, but I'm also like, I haven't given up hope. I think I know there's a path forward. In fact, if I recall, I might have been down personally 7 or 8 points in this last election this summer, and then I made it up by and won by 300 or 400 only votes by the end. So that's really, really big race to watch right now. That Mike Lee race is a really big deal for a supermajority in the NC Senate. Also, the other two more local related races, Mark Robeson, somebody we've been following, obviously, but he's in a really tough race. He's got 13,000 votes to DeAndrea Salvador, who's got 28,000, 69 to 31%. Nothing's impossible in this world, but you can almost call that at this point and say that ain't going to happen. But Cheryl Russo, 20,000 votes to Rachel Hunt's 30,000 votes. So 19 points, got 40 to 59. You can almost call that, but there's a scenario where today went bonkers and that could come back. Jay Sam, you're disagreeing? You think that's done?
No.
You think that could be done? Have you seen 40 to 59% make it up on election day?
Well, these days are a little bit crazier.
That's true.
I don't know. I mean, it's now a lot more Republicans.
Does the red wave wait until election day also?
That are voting earlier when now traditionally we have always been election day voters.
Yep.
That's not necessarily the case anymore.
So I think the punchlines are Michael Lee is in the neck and neck fight we thought he was going to be in out in Wilmington, which is killer, right? And so important. We love Mark Robeson that he started, but he was kind of destined in an uphill battle, and it looks like that's going to be an L. And it also looks like we'll lose that Russo race to Hunt, but I would say we don't need to completely count it out yet until we start. Like if we start seeing that 40% tick up and all of a sudden it's at 46 or 47 in an hour and a half, 2 hours from now, then all of a sudden we can revisit it. But that is not the situation you want to be in for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely you're going to be sweating bullets if you're. Yeah, and then if you look at the House side, I think Bill Brawley is in slightly better position than Cheryl Rousseau, down 15 points. Don Pomeroy, pretty similar to Rousseau at the 19-point mark, and even John Bradford's down 7. So a lot of us thinking about this going into it didn't really think Lee. We knew Lee and Bradford would be close, but a lot of Republican operatives weren't necessarily sweating a ton. So maybe 7% is if your priors hold, then maybe 7% is sort of the threshold that we're expecting to make up on election day. John Bradford and the early vote behind by 1,600 votes. Let's see what the Bill Brawley down by 3,400. Brandon Lofton Don Pomeroy down by 4,000. And that's interesting because if you looked at the actual split of the early voting by voter registration, you make a 50-50 assumption for unaffiliated voters. A lot of people thought that the actual vote totals might have come in a little bit closer, but I guess we'll have to find out. We'll have to wait and see. And one thing to note is that I don't believe every county has reported early voting. Mecklenburg has, but if you're looking at the Ted Budd race, counties are still reporting.
That might be one of the heavier skews we're seeing in the Ted Budd race, where we're seeing the early voting numbers of Mecklenburg, of Wake, places like that, theoretically, and not of some of the more rural areas.
Yes, even if you look, I think before we started this broadcast, it was about 700,000 to 400,000 in favor of Beasley. Now it's 900 to 700. So it's a 55-43 race right now for Sherry Beasley, ahead by just over 200,000 votes.
Krista, my wife, very excited. Early voting numbers. I haven't even got to these. Trent Merchant and Lisa Klein, school board, Mecklenburg school board related. It is neck and neck, 49.65% to 49.52%. That is wild. I got to tell you, that's probably the story of the night because that means Lisa Klein will make up the ground from this point forward. That is insane. I have to say that will be probably the story of the day for Mecklenburg municipal races. Holy cow, man. Yeah, why didn't I get to see what I mean? Charlie, you tried to go live. I'm trying to look at all the numbers in a very calculated way. That is all right. So that means let's go. We got to go see how
Is she at your house?
she is.
I'm not moving there.
She's not feeling well.
It's
Probably not
yeah, it's literally on that Merchant and Klein race. That is a 50 vote difference after early voting right now. So pure dead heat. Meanwhile, Sean Strain, District 6, running to stay alive as the incumbent, is behind by about 5,500 votes.
Is he?
Yeah.
Oh, damn, dude.
Uh,
Harold Sawyer about to get the old sayonara by Stephanie Steen.
with any luck, yes, phenomenal. Interesting race in District 1 school board between 5 different candidates. Right now, the early leader is Melissa Easley, which would be the Democratic backed candidate. Looking at city council, looks like it's a 6,500 vote lead for Laura Meyer over Matthew Ridenauer. Also 6.5 for Susan Rodriguez McDowell over Jeremy Brash.
Okay, wait. Say, I didn't hear that. I can't get to what was Matthew's numbers?
So it's a 15-point lead for Laura Meyer, and also 15-point lead for Susan Rodriguez McDowell over Jeremy Brash.
So what that means on the Matthew Laura Meyer race, which is very surprising, is so she's up by roughly 6,000 votes. So that is not insurmountable, but that is much higher than we were anticipating. The number should have been at most 2,500, and that would have been an even split of the unaffiliateds, which means she got the Democrats, and either she got a huge chunk of the unaffiliateds, or some of the Republicans bled over, which I can't fathom that. But that's I know Matthew must not be feeling good. I'm sure he's not given up at this point, but that's a 15-point spread right there, and that's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, if you would have done a 50-50 split of the unaffiliateds, Matthew would be down more or less 6 points, and to have him down 15 points.
I mean, he's down the same amount and almost the exact same numbers as the County Commission District 6 race between Susan Rodriguez McDowell and Jeremy Brash, fine person, not even remotely the name ID of Matthew Ridenauer.
Right.
So that's very interesting. Rhonda Cheek is deeply behind.
Yeah, that's not a major surprise. She joined the.
Who's Melissa Easley?
That's going to be the more progressive school board candidate.
So Roe was the other Republican.
Right.
So as you see, as we had thought in the beginning when that whole mix-up happened, 8,000 votes, 6,000 votes, they just split up a ton of votes.
There's a third conservative candidate in that race. I'm using the term conservative generously.
Which one is
Bill
that?
Fountain. So they've really split.
Holy, are you kidding me?
Yeah, they split it.
So they just split, let's see, 9, 15, 20,000 more conservative, more right of center votes to 12,000 that Melissa Easley just got.
Just a classic poor electoral strategy.
Guys, cannot do that.
Warning about for a long time there.
Wow. Stephanie Sneed doing work. I'm happy to see that, even though she's a Democrat.
Yeah, and so we're going to continue watching. Just now some of the actual election day votes looks like
Congress at the bottom of the stack, despite singing the national anthem at the Hornets game this week.
You would have thought that would have gotten her the.
I mean, it's almost like it doesn't make any sense. Oh, that's right. My wife's reminding me I need to go look at judges. Man, there's so much here. Let's look at these absolute. So transportation bonds, crushing. Well, at least housing bonds are behind 2% at 76% of the other two bonds. So maybe people somewhat got the message that
I was one of those yes, no votes.
yes, no. I mean, we didn't spend any effort spreading the word out on that.
I'm looking through, see if there's anything interesting on the
This
congressional.
Pat Cotham in the lead at large county commission. Lee Altman, Arthur Griffin, Tatiana, trying hard. Unfortunately, looking like at 14% right now, 70,000 votes, which is nothing to scoff at, but far behind the next up at 139,000.
So, and let's look at some of the U.S. Congress races. You've got District 1, which right behind your head there, Targ, is the large northeast North Carolina. Some people, it's been a blue seat for decades, or, well, ever since I've been paying attention to politics. Some people thought Sandy Smith might have a chance over there. She's down 20 points after the early vote, so that's going to be an uphill climb. The rest, going through. Interestingly, District 5, which is northwest North Carolina, one of the stalwart members, Virginia Fox, is only up 7 points after the early vote. District 6, which is kind of the Greensboro area, incumbent Kathy Manning, only up 9 points over Christian Caselli. That was a D plus 13. So that is interesting to watch.
You must have just got a bunch of rural early voting numbers in because that Ted Budd number really tightened. And I got to tell you,
now
it's 54 to 44.
Yeah, it's 10 points.
And I mean, I wish I knew how many, what the percentage of early vote in was. I guess I can't tell that, but
Starting to get pretty close to 100% of the early
votes. That's
and roughly 50% of the total vote. So it's a question: will election day vote for Ted Budd be more than 10% better than Sherry Beasley?
damn, dude. Richard Hudson is 51-48 right now. I didn't realize he had a tighter race. Like, I mean, that he's where he wants to be.
Right.
And now, after early voting, to be in the lead.
Well, Chuck Edwards is behind by 4 points. That's Madison Cawthorn's old seat in West North Carolina.
Yeah.
But that should be fine. Bo Hines down 15 points. So that's a little bit concerning. And then
again, that's what Bo Hines was the question mark of like of the most probable long shots. Probably, I would put Bo Hines at that level. Where then you looked at
that should be a seat that favors Republicans. He's not a long shot.
isn't that a D plus something? No.
That's basically an even seat.
Yeah. No way.
Yeah.
I don't believe that.
Well, but the one that's the real long shot going into today was Pat Harrigan here locally in District 12, but he has got quite a hill to climb. He's
I think you almost got it. That I would almost call that at this point.
23 points behind.
Yeah, I mean, what are those races normally?
These numbers are surprisingly brutal for Republicans, if I'm going to be honest.
But that's what my prediction was, where it's going to be like everyone on the national, and the reason I'm predicting this is because it's how I feel in almost every cycle that Republicans are good nationwide, which is everyone on the national media is like, yeah, we're doing it, and we're all like, what? We're losing. What's happening? And it's a Mecklenburg dynamic.
Yeah, well, this isn't just in Mecklenburg. This is North Carolina, just kind of as a whole. But looks like Ron DeSantis has been called as
Michael Stating down.
Reelected.
Huge.
In Florida.
You see that?
Well, let's look at the judges' races real quick.
Yeah, dude. Michael Stating is down 31 to 68. That is shocking almost.
That is shocking.
I don't know. Do you want to take a little pause for a bit so we can actually like look and not talk while we do stuff? Mm-hmm. Come back a little.
Stream of consciousness is fine.
Okay, well you do that, and I'm gonna go in the other room.
It's probably because you just have to pee. If I know
Stop it.
but Yes. So judges races, the Supreme Court really important right now. You know, you'd expect all these races to be pretty similar. Democratic candidates are ahead by about 140,000 in both of those races, similar for the North Carolina Court of Appeals.
We gotta get in commentaries now.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and also, I don't know what you were saying about stating. Stating is behind by 7, not by 20 something like you were saying. So all of the statewide judge races.
Computer, where I can at least look some drums.
Ladies and gentlemen, important PSA if you're tracking your own stats out there, and this is really important to remember. If you're on the Mecklenburg Board of Elections site or the state, you got to remember for people that have voting outside of Mecklenburg to do statewide, not inside a county, or you're only going to see those results. I don't know that that's what happened here, but I'm almost positive that's what it was.
Yeah, so that's all of the statewide judicial races are looking about the same. All the Republican candidates are down about 7 points. So what that makes me feel at this point, which is only loosely scientific, is that a lot of the candidates that we thought would be in close races, that would be winning, pulling out Republican victories of somewhere, less than 5 points, they're all down by 7 right now. So, my non-scientific conjecture is all the candidates that are in that range are going to be sweating it out. It's never nice to start out behind, but they may feel relatively confident of catching up. Looking at a couple of judicial races locally, there was an open seat for Superior Court judge. That would be Donald Curitin against Paulina Havelka. That's an 11.5% difference between Curitin and Havelka. It's only about 4,000 votes there that Havelka is behind. Matt Osman, moving up to Superior Court, he is behind by 9 points to Kimberly Best. So that is kind of where we are at there. Let's see if there's any updates nationally. So looking at Indiana District 1, that's this one up here near Chicago. Remember I mentioned that it was early. They've had their first vote dump, 19% of the votes in. Early lead for the Democratic incumbent Frank Mervan. I had 61-39 over Jennifer Ruth Green. In Virginia 7, we were actually up to 45% of the votes in. Still missing Prince William County, which is going to be more Democratic leaning, but it is a 9-point lead for the Republican. 54-45. That is a 10,000 vote lead. So that could be a national bellwether. I mean, I think that's where Yesli Vega would like to be at this stage right now. So that is relatively interesting. We do have a decent number of races that have been called. 14 House races have been called for Republicans. 7 have been called for Democrats. So 14-7 right now, Republicans lead. So I'm going to be keeping
Date.
up. Tark's back. So
Ron DeSantis, the next governor of Florida, called.
yeah, I called that a couple minutes ago.
Did you?
Yeah, they just called that.
Yeah.
Well, damn, dude. I mean, I don't know. I was in the other room.
I know you were right here when I called it.
I was here.
Yeah,
that doesn't. That's
it's not
good
good at listening.
Not good.
See what else we've got going on here. Now it's just the anxious, constant refreshing, right?
Yeah, this is it.
Looks like we still have no election day results from Mecklenburg County yet. So I'm going to keep looking at the statewide results. Only 20 precincts have reported. Virginia District 7 now down to a 9 point lead for Yesli Vega. That's actually 11,000 votes. So the vote differential has increased, but the overall percentage is a little bit lower. New York Times says it's too close to call right now. We will wait to see if there's a little bit more of a dump from Indiana. Indiana 1. See how we're looking. Georgia right now, and if we go through some of the Senate races, Georgia, Raphael Warnock against Herschel Walker. Walker so far getting pretty much what he wants, 26% of the votes in. It is a lead for Warnock, but not by as much as he would have expected. It is a 56 to 42% race currently for Warnock. North Carolina looking as we would have hoped. Ohio, which is going to be Tim Ryan against JD Vance. Looks like Vance is looking okay there. Again, early votes numbers only at this point. So looking through here, does seem a little bit better for Democrats than might have been expected, but we'll see how things go. Looking at the New York Times, they're currently forecasting Mehmet Oz to have a 2/10 of a point lead over John Fetterman for the Pennsylvania race. Herschel Walker 1.5%. Ted Budd only 3%. Ron Johnson 4% in Wisconsin. JD Vance 6% in Ohio, and those are really all the close races. South Carolina, Kentucky, and Oklahoma have been one of the Oklahoma races. There's 2 Senate races up for grabs this year. Have all been called for Republicans. On the Democratic side, Vermont, Maryland, Connecticut, and Illinois have been called. Still waiting for any election day results from Mecklenburg County. We have 37 precincts statewide. In North Carolina. So I'm gonna take a break here briefly as we're waiting for more election day results to come in. We'll be back in just a bit.